Welcome back. All right, I want to talk about charging. I want to talk about charging because it feels like we're all having this discussion about something without actually getting into what the rule says. And the NHL, does it call its rule book? No. Should it? Absolutely. So, what is a charge? Well, a charge is when you take 3 or more strides, right? No, it is not. Now, it may have been at one point in time, and if you look up rule books, the USA Hockey rule book, so for like I'm assuming USHL and for college hockey, it says more than 2 strides. The NHL rule book doesn't say anything about how many strides constitute a charge. A charge is considered the distance traveled, the violence of the check. That's your basics. So I'm going to read this out. Rule 42.1, you can find this on the NHL site. You can download the PDF and read it for yourself. All the rules are right there. A minor or major penalty shall be imposed on a player who skates, jumps into, or charges an opponent in any manner. Charging shall mean the actions of a player who, as a result of distance traveled, shall violently check an opponent in any manner. A charge may be the result of a check into the boards, into the goal frame, or in open ice. A minor, major, or a major in a game misconduct shall be imposed on a player who charges a goalkeeper while the goalkeeper is within his goal crease. A goalkeeper is not fair game just because he's outside the crease area. The appropriate penalty should be assessed in every case where an opposing player makes unnecessary contact with a goalkeeper. However, incidental contact at the discretion of the referee will be permitted when the goalkeeper is in the act of playing the puck outside his goal crease, provided the attacking player has made a reasonable effort to avoid such contact. So that's where goalie interference comes in as well, right? So it's kind of overlapping with charging. So distance traveled. How far does he go? And it's not, well, he stopped skating, he stopped taking strides, so it's not a charging more. That's not really true. If a guy's going at full speed and then he glides the last 20 or 30 feet, he's still going really fast. It's not like you turn your skate sideways to stop before the hit either, right? So, skates, jumps into, or charges an opponent in any manner. I really think that if there was 3 strides at some point in the record or in the rule book, they took it out because there's more to it than strides. These guys skate incredibly fast. Most players in the NHL now skate much faster than players did 20 or 30 years ago. This is part of the problem I've had with the rule book is we're still calling it for guys who are 6'5", 200 pounds, like we did when guys were 5'8" and 150. It's a little bit different. And the shape these guys in, a little bit different as well. So the rules have to evolve. They have to change. And in this case, it's just call the rule book. And I've talked about this in videos before, right? I wish the NHL would call the rule book. This is one of the ultimate examples of that. Notice, nowhere in here does it say if a player is defenseless. That doesn't matter. So the whole keep your head up, that's more for boarding. That's more for that. For charging, it's not in the book. It's kind of one of those unwritten rules. It's an unwritten rule. It's his own fault. He made it happen. No. The only onus in this is on Scheifele, is on a player charging. So distance travel and the violence of the check. It's a very violent check. The distance traveled was from the other end of the ice. And then from there, the NHL gets to make up its mind on what they do. So match penalty, the referee at his discretion may assess a match penalty if in his judgment the player attempted to or deliberately injured his opponent by charging. This was a situation where an empty net goal's going in. There was nothing that could be done to stop that empty net goal from going in. And so player loses his temper. And it's not the first time it's happened. And I know I've seen a lot of people saying, well, what about these hits and what about those hits? Right, yes. The NHL's been very inconsistent in calling this. So we want to see some consistency, right? So the league needs to sit down with teams once this season's over, and I think this is something that needs to be discussed. We are seeing a lot of borderline incidents this year that because of the gray area in the rules, the gray area in how these rules have been called means that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when somebody's going to end up with a career-ending injury, right? Or that one of these concussions. Last night, Jake Evans, now he's out indefinitely with a concussion. We don't know how bad that's going to be. We have no idea if he's going to be back in the next round, sometime later in this round, or maybe not by October, right? So the other thing that gets me is when people say, well, just take hitting out of the game. Well, no. So last night's game, there were 42 hits by the Jets, 24 by Montreal, 21 by Vegas, 22 by Colorado. That's 109 hits. We're talking about one incident versus 109 hits. There's nobody that's saying to take hitting out of the game. Nobody. But some of these incidents do need to have some kind of consequence because it's in the rule book. It is absolutely in the rule book. Like I said, I'm going to do the Hockey 101 for new fans to the game and with Seattle coming in. But also because I don't think the rule book gets called. I really don't. I think when we look at what gets called and we throw our hands up in the air and go, how is that a penalty? Well, it's probably a penalty in the last game too, but they didn't call it that way. So there also needs to be some kind of discussion between referees and the NHL when the season's over. And I can almost guarantee with the amount of controversies we've had already, there will be a conversation between the league and their officials about trying to find a better way to call the game and make it more efficient. This isn't about taking hitting out of the game. Nobody wants to take hitting out of the game. That's just not a thing. But when you see these overly violent, over-the-top incidents, and when you're dealing with a player who had already lost his temper numerous times in the game, it's those are the kinds of things that most fans would want to see taken out. And nobody's saying to get rid of fighting either. That's the other part that I never quite understand is the whole, everybody wants to get rid of fighting. No, we don't. I've never once in a video said there shouldn't be fighting in hockey. It's been a part of hockey my entire life. It's been a hockey since well before I was born, and it's going to be around well after I'm long gone. Fighting is going nowhere in the game. But the one thing that's changed is we don't have guys who play 2 or 3 minutes per game and are just there just as fighters. We don't have those kinds of players now. You may have guys who can fight, but if you can't take a regular shift, that career's not going to last very long because teams can't afford to have one of their players who can't take a regular shift. It's going to cause other problems in the lineup. So what's interesting is that, like I said, USA Hockey says more than 2 strides. So by that standard, what happened with Scheifele last night would not be considered charging. Now, whether or not there's another penalty you can throw on there, sure. But, it wouldn't have been considered charging. And the NHL rulebook, as I said, nothing about strides. Nothing in here talks about how many strides are taken. These guys go really fast. They're really big. And the idea of, well, if you let up a little bit and you don't keep chugging, you're still going pretty fast. The rule of thumb has been that 3 or more strides is a charge, but the league has discretion there. And that needs to go. I honestly think in order for us to not have as many of these debates as we do every single year, and every year there's another debate. And within the next couple of weeks, there'll probably be another player and another incident we're talking about, whether it's a slash or it's a penalty shot awarded on a hook that wouldn't have been awarded in the regular season, or maybe they don't call a penalty shot at one time in a game, and then in the next game, two different teams have the exact same incident and it's a penalty shot. The consistency of the rules being called is definitely an issue. But, league discretion, if that was taken out, I think that would be for the best. I really think it should all be black and white. And then the players should be explained, should have that explained to them as well. Because if you look at the reaction to the Scheifele hit, not just from fans, but from even players, current players, former players, there's no consensus there either. And I think a lot of it may very well be that the idea, well, that's not a charge because it wasn't more than 2 strides, even though the NHL rulebook doesn't talk about it. That's where you've got to have this open discussion, and I would hope the NHL has that soon. Because again, it ends up muddying the waters. And we should have some kind of a video presentation where somebody comes out and says, all right, so from the NHL this year, we're going to look at 10 hits and why we did call this and why we didn't call that. And I'm talking like a nice big, well-produced video package from the National Hockey League. I would be fascinated to watch something like that. Here's why these slashes were penalties and these ones weren't. Or come out and say, these should have been called and these ones shouldn't have been. Something along those lines, without tearing down the referees, without making it like you're making scapegoats of the refs. And to try to make it so that there's better understanding. So when an incident like this takes place, we can all go, yeah, so that was a charge because, and then we can all discuss. Okay, so he chased this far, but again, we'll see what happens. Scheifele will be suspended later on today. Again, a hearing means a suspension, but charging, as a rule, it does not mention strides anywhere. I've been looking this up. I thought, well, that doesn't seem right. So I went through various sites and various locations to try to find other information. And the strides thing comes from us as fans who've been long-time fans, from hockey players, former hockey players, and numerous times on Coach's Corner. Anytime they talk about a charge, you go, that was only one stride. That's not a charge. That's 3 strides. That's a charge. And we would see that discussion weekly. And just in general, on hockey shows, they'd say, oh, well, that's not a charge because there wasn't the 3 strides. Apparently that rule doesn't exist in the National Hockey League. Now, whether this rule ends up being changed in the offseason, we'll see. But, yeah, so charging doesn't mention strides. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing right through. You just happened upon this video. I did not intend to have this kind of rule discussion. I wanted to have some fun with the rule discussions. The one thing about that, though, too, is that if I was doing that at meetups where I was around other people, yeah, we're going to have to research all the rules and what they actually say. Because sometimes what they actually say and what is called and how are not the same thing. And that's a problem with a league that's looking to expand and looking to win over new fans and keep their current fans as well. Because there are plenty of people who get upset with the way the rules are called, but when they make changes to the rules, we may not hear very much about them at the time. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.